Most people believe life is happening to them. They're trapped in a world of reaction, not creation. You're told you can't change your destiny, that you are subject to forces beyond control. But what if that's a lie? In this video, we reveal why the true teachings of the Kybalion are hidden from the ordinary mind, and how only those ready to reshape reality from the inside out will ever discover its power. The greatest lie ever sold to the masses is that truth belongs to all, that it is democratic, that it is generous. But the truth is never offered freely. It must be stolen, extracted from the chaos of illusion like fire from the heavens. Those who wait for it to be handed down, like beggars at the gates of a silent temple, will die waiting. The masses are entertained with shadows and satisfied with half-truths, because full truths demand something they do not possess: internal revolution. The Kybalion, cloaked in veils of mysticism and simplicity, speaks in symbols that seem accessible. But symbols are traps to the uninitiated. Language itself is a barrier. Words are codes, not open doors. The law of mentalism, the first principle of the Kybalion, declares the all is mind, a phrase so deceptively simple that the majority recite it without trembling. They treat it like poetry when in truth it is a declaration of war on passivity, a call to mental dominion over all things. To believe that the all is mind is to take responsibility for every thread of reality you perceive. And that is a weight only the strong can bear. Most will never even look beyond the veil, let alone pierce it. Their lives are governed by routine, distraction, and surface-level morality. Systems designed not to enlighten but to contain. They mistake comfort for peace, safety for virtue, and compliance for wisdom. The custodians of true knowledge have long known this. That is why the ancient schools were secret. That is why initiates were tested, humiliated, starved, and stripped of identity before they were given a single word of power. Because truth is not safe. Truth dismantles the self. It devours ego. It challenges the idea of justice, fairness, and even love. Truth is not for the many because the many cannot withstand it. The Kybalion speaks to the few because the few are willing to undo themselves in order to become. To know truth is to walk alone. It means breaking the pact you were born into, the one that binds you to society's illusions. From childhood, you are conditioned to obey, to seek approval, to measure your reality through the eyes of others. You are taught to ignore the voice inside, and instead listen to systems that profit from your blindness. The Kybalion is a mirror held to that voice within. But mirrors do not lie. They only reflect what stands before them, and most cannot face their own reflection without horror. Those who are ready must first undergo death, not of the body, but of the identity. The self must be deconstructed before truth can be constructed in its place. This is not a metaphor. The man who sees through the illusions of matter, energy, time, and ego can no longer operate within society as he once did. He becomes a stranger among his own people. He must learn to speak in riddles, to smile through understanding, and to conceal his power from those who would crucify him for it. Because the herd does not tolerate deviation, it fears difference, and above all, it resents clarity. So the truth becomes secret not because it must be, but because it has to be. It is not hidden out of cruelty, but out of necessity. You do not hand a torch to a man soaked in oil. You do not reveal the architecture of reality to a mind addicted to fiction. You do not give the sword of mentalism to a child who thinks his emotions are the truth. The Kybalion is a test. One most fail before they even realize they've begun it. Its wisdom conceals itself not by design of the authors, but by the design of nature. Just as pearls do not float, truth does not rise to meet the surface. It sinks and waits. To find it, one must be willing to dive alone into pressure, darkness, and silence. The silence within. The truth will not call out to you. It is not a seducer. It is a sovereign. And like all true sovereigns, it does not concern itself with being understood. It simply reigns, indifferent to who bows and who walks away. Those who are ready do not need to be told what the Kybalion means. They see it. They live it. They become it. The rest will quote it and remain as they are. Echo chambers for a wisdom they will never possess. The first principle is the foundation, and the foundation is control. The all is mind is not a comforting philosophical phrase. It is a code of conquest. It is the architecture behind every empire, every movement, every manipulation that has ever succeeded. If all is mind, then the battlefield is internal and invisible. Those who rule do so not by weapons, but by shaping thought. Reality itself is molded by the one who understands that perception is reality. He who controls perception does not need to force obedience. He creates it, breeds it, engineers it in the mental substrate of his subjects. Most read the Kybalion as mystics or dreamers, hoping to be soothed by esoteric poetry, but the one who is prepared reads it as a tactician. The all is mind is not merely a metaphysical assertion, it is a strategic commandment. It reveals that reality is plastic to the directed will, that the universe is a responsive mirror, and that thoughts are not passive flickers but weapons, tools, seeds. In the hands of the undisciplined, the mind is a prison. In the hands of the initiated, the mind is a forge. Power belongs not to the one who reacts, but to the one who imposes order upon the field of thought before anyone else knows there is a battle. This is why the masses are so easily herded. Their minds are foreign territory. They belong not to themselves but to systems, cultures, ideologies, and distractions. Every thought they think is second-hand. Their desires are installed, their fears manufactured. They consume meaning instead of creating it. In contrast, the adept becomes the origin point, the center of gravity, the one from whom ripples of mental force extend outward. Not because he is special by birth, but because he has claimed responsibility for the mental plane. And in claiming responsibility, he claims power. Mentalism is not abstract spirituality. It is the blueprint behind propaganda, religion, education, marketing, leadership, seduction, war. Every effective general, every legendary ruler, every spiritual architect, whether they admit it or not, has used the principle of mentalism. They may not speak of it in the language of Hermeticism, but they act from its core. They understand that to shift reality, they must first shift the collective thought forms that define what is possible, what is normal, what is true. The mind is not just the receiver of reality. It is the projector. The uninitiated live by default. Their minds are ruled by habit, imitation, and fear. They believe in objects, in circumstances, in luck, in fate. They believe the outer world is more real than the inner. And so, they are ruled. Not because they are weak in body, but because they are formless in mind. They react to headlines, they adapt to trends, they fight illusions. They wage war in the theater, while the scriptwriters remain untouched in the balcony. Those who control thought never need to fire a bullet. They shape narratives and let the audience destroy itself. To internalize mentalism is to take dominion over the invisible. It is to move from pawn to player, from effect to cause. But it comes at a cost, the death of innocence. The realization that no one is coming to save you, that your gods, governments, and guides are mental constructs, that even the concept of a savior is a mechanism of control. This realization fractures the old self, and in the ruins, power is born. True power. Silent, invisible, undeniable. The kind of power that walks unnoticed yet bends the air when it enters a room. Not because it demands attention, but because it shapes the field itself. Mentalism teaches that every event, every relationship, every rise and fall in your life is a reflection of the contents of your mind. This is not metaphor. It is causality. The trained mind produces structure. The undisciplined mind breeds chaos. Those who cannot command their own thoughts are slaves, no matter how free they appear. Slaves to doubt, to suggestion, to the illusions of others. The one who sees this law for what it is begins to speak less, to observe more, to think strategically instead of emotionally. He becomes deliberate. He edits his reality with surgical precision, not as a mystic, but as a master. Because to master the mind is to master the world. Not through force, but through structure. Not by reacting to appearances, but by generating the unseen patterns that make appearances inevitable. This is the secret that no ruler explains and every ruler embodies. As above, so below, as below, so above. This axiom, revered and repeated by many, is seldom understood in the manner it was intended. The law of correspondence is not merely a poetic bridge between the stars and the soil, between soul and body. It is a method of domination. It is a formula. A mirror, a cipher through which the initiated can calculate outcomes, read systems, and alter events across scales. Those who grasp this principle do not wait for trends to emerge or tides to shift. They generate them. They influence the macro by mastering the micro. They move mountains not by force, but by striking the subtle nerves that govern tectonic plates beneath the surface. This is the secret behind all elite systems, esoteric schools, imperial courts, intelligence networks, financial cartels. They move in silence in small, precise rituals, knowing that a properly executed gesture in the unseen world will erupt into consequence in the visible world. The law of correspondence reveals that reality is layered, not separate. Every level of existence is a reflection of another. Political structures mirror psychological ones. Economic cycles reflect cosmic rhythms. National identities stem from individual complexes. The one who knows how to read this system becomes fluent in power. The one who knows how to speak through it becomes dangerous. What the ordinary mind calls coincidence, the strategist calls correspondence. The patterns that seem random to the blind are deliberate to the one with sight. There are no accidents in the architecture of cause. The physical world follows the lead of the metaphysical. The crowd chants the slogans of the few because the few understood the symbolic levers of mass emotion. The inner generates the outer. The invisible gives birth to the visible. All manipulation begins not with hands or weapons, but with ideas encoded beneath perception. To manipulate is not to lie, it is to direct. It is to speak through symbols, metaphors, gestures, and environments in a way that causes the lower world to bend to the shape of the higher command. For example, one who understands this principle can alter a nation's trajectory by subtly adjusting a word in a founding text, by placing a monument at a specific intersection, by framing a myth in a way that rewires cultural memory. The ignorant will praise or protest what they see, but they will never touch the hand that sculpted it, because that hand operates in the plane of correspondence. It creates below by designing above. This law also reveals the futility of treating symptoms while ignoring structures. People wage wars on poverty, addiction, division, never realizing that these are effects, not causes. They scream against corruption while replicating the same psychological patterns of dependency and fear in their personal lives. The initiated knows that to change a system, one must first mirror it internally. The corrupt world is a projection of the corrupted mind. The political theater is a drama produced by the collective unconscious. To shift the world, one must shift the unseen narrative. One must enter the place where myth becomes matter, where belief calcifies into law, and where image becomes flesh. This is why initiates meditate not to relax, but to command. Why they study astrology not as superstition, but as geometry, an astral architecture that reflects terrestrial events. Why they examine archetypes, symbols, and sacred geometry as operational tools, not decorative esoterica. Every ritual, every sigil, every uttered phrase, when aligned with the law of correspondence, becomes a mechanism of command, not because it has magical force in the Hollywood sense, but because it activates structures that reverberate through the layers of being. The initiated does not pray for outcomes. He designs the patterns from which outcomes must emerge. The law of correspondence also guards against delusion. It forces the adept to confront his internal landscape. If the outer world is hostile, chaotic, or enslaving, it is a reflection. If a man cannot govern his thoughts, he cannot govern a nation. If his mind is fractured, his relationships will mirror that schism. If he suppresses his darkness, it will rise in the world around him as enemy, rival, or oppressor. This is not moralism. It is not punishment. It is the inevitable return of the signal. Reality is recursive. It echoes what is placed within it. It is obedient. The universe is loyal to whatever blueprint it is given, and the one who dares to edit the blueprint becomes, in effect, its hidden architect. All of nature dances between opposites. Light and dark, love and hate, chaos and order, rise and fall. These movements are not random. They are governed by law. The law of polarity and the law of rhythm do not merely describe the shifting tides of existence. They offer the tools to direct them. What the uninitiated sees as fate, the initiated sees as pattern. What the common man endures, the master engineers. He uses these twin laws not as observers do, but as kings use pawns strategically, precisely, and without attachment. Polarity and rhythm are not moods or philosophies. They are weapons, sharpened by awareness and wielded by will. The law of polarity teaches that all truths are half-truths, and all opposites are merely different degrees of the same essence. Love and hate are not enemies. They are twin blades of one sword. Fear and courage, success and failure, virtue and vice, all are bound by the same thread, pulled in opposite directions. To know this is to become fluid. To weaponize it is to become untouchable. The one who masters polarity can switch mental states at will, rising above emotional manipulation while steering others into it. He understands that every extreme evokes its counterpart, that every movement births its reaction. He does not cling to positions. He uses them. This is how empires rise through fear and collapse into chaos, because the architects behind them knew how to stir the poles. They knew that to increase control, one must first exaggerate disorder, that to justify war, one must first induce fear, that to unify the herd, one must present a common enemy. Polarity is the architecture of ideology. Control the poles and you control the reaction. If the people love you, they can be led. If they hate you, they can be weaponized. But if they are neutral, they are immovable. Polarity creates movement. Movement creates opportunity. This is why the masses are never allowed to rest in the middle. They are constantly pushed between outrage and apathy, hope and despair, identity and opposition. They are programmed to live in contrast, because contrast makes them predictable. The strategist does not get caught in this storm. He rides above it. He can make the public love a tyrant or burn a savior, not by altering the man, but by tilting the perception, by inverting the pole. The trick is not to resist polarity, but to ride it like a wave, to shift the mental temperature gradually until the public forgets where they began. Then comes rhythm, the heartbeat of polarity. All things swing. The pendulum moves always. But while the masses are moved by it, the few learn to anticipate and exploit it. Rhythm is timing. Rhythm is the current beneath surface events. Civilizations, currencies, ideologies, even personal fortunes, all rise and fall according to this law. The one who studies rhythm can see the crash before it arrives. He knows when to retreat while others are drunk on victory. He knows when to strike when others are blind with despair. Rhythm governs cycles, the decay of truth, the rebirth of lies, the nostalgia of old myths, the rage of new rebellions. But rhythm is not fate. It can be counterbalanced. The Kybalion whispers this secret to those who can hear it. The pendulum swings, but the wise step aside. The adept does not allow himself to be dragged by rhythm. He applies polarity to offset its effects. If sorrow approaches, he cultivates detachment. If success inflates him, he summons discipline. He sees rhythm not as emotion, but as climate. And just like a skilled navigator reads the winds, he sets his sails accordingly. He does not curse the tide. He uses it to move faster. In the political realm, rhythm is used to anesthetize populations. Waves of crisis followed by waves of relief. Each time the tension builds, it is followed by a promise of normalcy. The people breathe easier, not realizing the rhythm has been orchestrated. They mistake the pattern for salvation. But those who control the rhythm decide the direction of history. They are the silent drummers behind the dance. They know that once rhythm is understood, rebellion can be predicted, hope can be injected or withdrawn, and entire generations can be trained to accept decline as destiny. The adept applies this same law in personal mastery. He studies the rhythm of his thoughts, the swing of his moods, the tide of his ambition. He sees where temptation returns, where laziness recurs, where inspiration dips. He uses observation as resistance, consciousness as counterforce. His rhythm does not own him. He owns it, and through this sovereignty, he becomes stable while the world swings violently between extremes. He becomes immune to cycles of failure, loss, confusion. He uses rhythm not as a curse, but as a stairway. He rides the lowest swing to ascend to the next level. And while others are enslaved by rhythm's hypnotic pulse, he learns to conduct the music itself. To the eyes of the untrained, life appears to be a series of random events. A cascade of fortune and misfortune, luck and tragedy. blessings and curses, with no origin point, no logic, no agency. This illusion serves the systems that rule them. It trains men to pray rather than act, to wish rather than build, to react rather than design. They are told to accept the flow of life as it comes, to adapt, to obey, to surrender to what is. But the Hermetic law of cause and effect strips this illusion bare and exposes a hard, simple truth: there is no effect without a cause. There is no result without initiation. And those who command causes do not suffer effects. They create them. The world is governed by this law absolutely, silently, and without exception. It is not a law made by man. It is the architecture behind experience itself. Every result has a root. Every outcome has an initiator. There is no such thing as coincidence. There is only design, whether conscious or unconscious. The masses live under this law blindly. They are ruled by causes they neither understand nor question. The news manipulates their fears. Fashion dictates their identity. History repeats through them, because they have not claimed authorship of their own timeline. They are the debris of stronger wills, floating, shifting, obeying invisible triggers, responding to the echoes of others' decisions. The adept, however, becomes the point of origin. He ceases to react and begins to generate. He knows that to change his life, his environment, or his world, he must first take hold of the causal plane. This is not wishful thinking or mystical optimism. It is ruthless responsibility. It is mental architecture. The architect does not wait for the building to rise. He draws the blueprint and imposes it upon raw materials. He calculates outcome through structure. The same applies to reality. The wise man acts on the inner planes before any movement touches the outer. His thoughts are not fantasies. They are triggers. His focus is not daydreaming. It is programming. Cause and effect is the law behind all hierarchies. The few create the weather, the many dress for it. The few write the script, the many act it out. Governments, corporations, religions, movements, all are built by men who understand how to initiate causes while hiding their hands. They never speak in the language of force unless the illusion of chaos serves them. They build conditions that produce the reactions they desire. The people cry for solutions to problems that were engineered precisely to generate that outcry. This is not corruption. It is causality weaponized. To break free from this machinery, one must accept that nothing in his life has ever occurred without permission, even if that permission was unconscious. Every failure, every victory, every betrayal, every pattern is a manifestation of internal causation. The law does not care whether you are aware of it. It operates regardless. But to become aware of it is to step into dominion. The moment a man begins to trace the causes behind his outcomes, he begins to extract power from the rubble. He sees how his thoughts gave birth to weakness, how his patterns summoned lessons, how his beliefs structured limitations. This awakening is brutal. It shatters the innocence that society worships. It forces a man to abandon the comforting myths of injustice, victimhood, and external blame. It forces him to look in the mirror and see not a person, but a source. And from that moment forward, he can never go back. He begins to shape his future not by hope, but by structure. He re-engineers his habits, edits his thoughts, weaponizes his focus, and takes strategic control of his own timeline. This is sovereignty, not over others, but over the self, the only empire that cannot be taken from him. He also begins to see the wider game. He no longer marvels at the success of the powerful. He understands the chain of causality that brought them there. He no longer envies the rich, the influential, or the prophetic. He studies the mechanisms they use. He identifies the pattern. He observes how they generate influence before influence is needed, how they enter rooms mentally before ever being physically present, how they construct outcomes weeks, months, even years in advance by embedding causes in conversations, symbols, gestures, and laws. They are not lucky. They are deliberate. They operate on the causal plane while the rest of the world suffers on the level of consequence. The practitioner of this law becomes invisible to the herd, not because he hides, but because he no longer reacts. He moves differently. He speaks less. He acts before others even know action is required. His movements seem effortless, but they are calculated at levels others do not perceive. They see the fruit, not the root. They see the crown, not the soil. But he lives in the soil. He is the soil. He plants what he wants to harvest and walks away, knowing the law does not fail. He does not pray for fate to change. He sets the conditions that demand its transformation. To rule one's own life is to become the first cause in a world of endless effect. It is to be the storm, not the leaf it carries. It is to speak not in wishes, but in commands encoded in thought, decision, and structure. You were not brought here to be comforted. You were brought here to remember what has always been hidden in plain sight. The Kybalion does not belong to the curious. It belongs to the dangerous, to the ones willing to unmake themselves, to disarm belief, to burn the illusion of fate and seize the machinery behind appearances. These laws are not passive teachings. They are tools, instruments of transformation for those who refuse to be shaped by the world any longer. You have seen how truth is reserved only for those who can wield it without trembling, how reality is a mental field waiting to be claimed, how the invisible forces of polarity and rhythm are not moods to endure but currents to command, how cause is not a mystery but a throne, and effect is its echo. The Kybalion never hides itself. It simply demands a price that most are too afraid to pay, the death of who they think they are. And in return, it offers nothing less than creative authority over one's own existence. The question is not whether the Kybalion will reveal itself to you. The question is whether you are willing to stop asking for permission and begin rewriting the script. Because reality does not respond to need. It bows to those who dare to act as its author.